The emergency signal crackled through the communication arrays of the Galactic Council station, like a dying star's last breath. Ambassador Velthar's tentacles twitched as he adjusted the frequency, his three eyes focusing on the holographic display that materialized before him. The sender was identified as Ambassador Zethkai of the Valoran Republic, broadcasting from the remote Kepler 442 system. "This is an urgent distress call to all council members." Zethkai's voice trembled through the speakers. The tall, blue-skinned humanoid appeared on screen, his normally pristine white robe stained and torn. Behind him, emergency lights flashed red, casting eerie shadows across what appeared to be a research facility's control room. "Our scientific outpost on Kepler 442b has come under unprovoked attack by primitive Deathworlders. We require immediate military assistance." Velthar's assistant, a young crystalline named Quartz 7, chimed softly. "Sir, the transmission appears to be genuine. The encryption codes match Valoran protocols and the signal originates from registered Valoran space." The Galactic Council chamber filled quickly as emergency protocols activated. Representatives from dozens of species materialized through holographic projectors or hurried through the physical entrances. The vast circular room buzzed with confused chatter in 100 different languages as universal translators struggled to keep pace. "Order, order!" Council Prime Executor Thaindus called out, his massive rhinoid frame commanding attention. "Ambassador Zethkai, please provide details of this attack." "Which Deathworlder species are we dealing with?" Zethkai glanced over his shoulder as distant explosions echoed through his transmission. "The humans, Prime Executor. They've somehow bypassed our outer defenses and are systematically destroying our research facility. Our security forces are no match for their savage tactics." A ripple of concern passed through the chamber. The humans were a relatively new species to the galactic community, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 2 decades ago. Most council members viewed them as primitive but potentially useful for manual labor and military service. However, their classification as Deathworlders meant they came from a planet so hostile that survival required extreme adaptability and aggression. "What exactly was the nature of your research on Kepler 442b?" asked Councillor Mertheta, her aquatic form undulating in its mobile water tank. Her species, the Depths, were known for their careful attention to detail. Zethkai hesitated for just a moment too long. "We were conducting psychological studies on various species' responses to isolation and stress. All perfectly legal under Council research guidelines, I assure you. The humans attacked without warning or provocation. Psychological research requires proper consent forms and oversight," Mertheta pressed, her gill slits fluttering with suspicion. "Do you have documentation showing your test subjects volunteered for these studies?" Another explosion rocked Zethkai's facility, and sparks showered from damaged systems behind him. "The documentation is in our primary servers, which are currently under attack. I don't have time for bureaucratic procedures while my people are being slaughtered." Council Prime Executor Thaindus raised his massive hand for silence. "The immediate concern is preventing an unauthorized military action by the humans. Regardless of any procedural issues with the Valoran research, we cannot allow Deathworlders to attack Council member facilities without justification." "But sir," Quartz 7 whispered to Ambassador Velthar, "shouldn't we verify what kind of research was actually being conducted? The Valorans have been very secretive about their activities in that system." Velthar waved a dismissive tentacle. "The humans are barely civilized. They probably attacked because they didn't understand the scientific importance of the work being done there." On the main screen, Zethkai suddenly looked to his left, his face going pale. "They're in the facility. How did they get past our internal security grids?" He turned back to the camera with desperate eyes. "Please, you must send a fleet immediately. They're not stopping at military targets. They're accessing our research data, our experimental subjects." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving the council chamber in tense silence. "Well," Thaindus said heavily, "it appears we have a situation. The humans have committed an act of war against a council member species. We must respond appropriately." "Wait," Mertheta interjected, her translator giving her voice a tinkling quality like underwater bells. "Something about this doesn't feel right. Why would humans travel so far into Valoran space just to attack a research station? And why did Ambassador Zethkai seem so evasive about his research subjects?" "Because Deathworlders are violent by nature," snorted Councillor Grex. a large insectoid with clicking mandibles. They probably saw an opportunity for conquest and took it. We've all heard the stories about their homeworld. Constant warfare, natural disasters, predators everywhere. Violence is all they understand. Ambassador Velthar accessed his personal datapad, scrolling through recent reports. According to our intelligence, there have been several incidents of human civilian transports going missing in the Outer Rim territories over the past few months. Perhaps this is connected to increased human military activity in the region. Missing transports? Mirthetta's water tank bubbled with agitation. Were these incidents reported to Council security? The reports were filed but given low priority, Velthar admitted. Human space is on the edge of civilized territory. Ship losses due to pirates or navigation errors are common in those regions. Councillor Grex's antennae twitched with impatience. We're wasting time with speculation. The facts are simple. Humans have attacked a peaceful research facility belonging to a council member. We need to mobilize a response fleet immediately to restore order. I agree, Thaindus declared, his voice echoing through the chamber. However, we should also attempt diplomatic contact with the human fleet first. Perhaps this is simply a misunderstanding that can be resolved without further bloodshed. As the council members began debating the composition of a response fleet, none of them noticed the small data packet that had been embedded in Zethkai's transmission. Hidden beneath layers of encryption, it would take several hours for Council intelligence services to decode it. When they finally did, they would discover something that would change everything. Detailed records of experiments conducted on unwilling subjects, including biosignatures that matched 37 human children who had been listed as missing from various transport incidents. But by then it would be too late for diplomatic solutions. In the depths of space, human long-range sensors were already detecting the approaching Council response fleet. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Human Expeditionary Force flagship Defiant, her jaw set in grim determination as she reviewed the evidence her teams had recovered from the Valoran facility. "Ma'am," her communications officer reported, "we're receiving multiple Council diplomatic frequencies requesting immediate dialogue." Chen looked down at the medical report in her hands, detailing the condition of the children they had rescued. Some would recover physically, but the psychological damage would take years to heal. "Ignore all diplomatic channels," she ordered. "Send a priority message to Earth Command. Authorization code Crimson Dawn." Her crew exchanged glances. Crimson Dawn was the code for crimes against humanity so severe that standard rules of engagement were suspended. "Ma'am," her tactical officer said quietly, "Crimson Dawn protocols require confirmation from multiple Deathworlder species before activation. Then get me the Saurian Dominion. The Hive clans and the Ursine Confederacy on encrypted channels," Chen replied, her voice hard as steel. "Tell them what we found here. Tell them about the children. The universe was about to learn that there were some lines that could never be crossed, no matter how civilized a species claimed to be." Captain Sarah Chen stood in the medical bay of her flagship, watching as Dr. Martinez finished examining the last of the rescued children. The sterile white walls seemed to mock the horrors these young ones had endured. 37 children, ranging in age from 6 to 14, all bearing the physical and emotional scars of months of captivity. "How are they, Doctor?" Chen asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Martinez pulled off his gloves with shaking hands. "Physically, most will recover completely given time and proper nutrition. But Captain," he paused, struggling to find the right words, "what they did to these children goes beyond anything I've seen in 20 years of military medicine. The psychological experiments, the sensory deprivation, the deliberate infliction of terror to study human stress responses." Chen's jaw tightened. She had read the preliminary reports from the assault teams that had stormed the Valoran facility. The evidence they had gathered painted a picture of systematic cruelty that made her stomach turn. "What about the boy they found in the isolation chamber?" "Marcus Williams, age 8, Dr. Martinez said, checking his tablet. "He's been in sensory deprivation for 3 weeks according to the Valoran records. Complete darkness, no sound. Minimal human contact except for the researchers who would subject him to various psychological tests. He hasn't spoken a word since we rescued him." Chen walked over to the observation window of one of the medical rooms. Inside, a small boy sat on the edge of a bed, staring at nothing. His dark hair hung in his face, and his thin frame showed clear signs of malnutrition. But it was his eyes that broke her heart. empty, haunted like those of a combat veteran who had seen too much. "Captain," her communications officer's voice came through the intercom. "Priority message from Admiral Harrison at Earth Command. He's requesting an immediate tactical briefing." "Tell him I'll be right there," Chen replied. She took one last look at Marcus through the window. The boy's medical chart showed he had been taken from a civilian passenger liner 3 months ago, along with his younger sister, Emma. Emma was in the room next door, clinging to a teddy bear one of the Marines had given her, rocking back and forth while humming a lullaby to herself. The bridge of the Defiant buzzed with controlled activity as Chen entered. Her senior officers had assembled around the main tactical display, which showed the Kepler 442 system in 3-dimensional detail. Red markers indicated the locations where they had found evidence of Valoran crimes. "Admiral Harrison is standing by on Secure Channel 1, Lieutenant Commander Torres reported. Chen activated the holographic display, and Admiral Harrison's weathered face appeared before her. Behind him, she could see the familiar walls of Earth Command's Crisis Management Center. "Captain Chen," the Admiral began without preamble, "your preliminary report has reached the highest levels of government. The President and the Defense Council are demanding answers. Did the Valorans really take our children?" "Yes, sir," Chen replied grimly. 37 confirmed human subjects, all children, all taken from civilian transports over the past 6 months. The Valorans documented everything. They were studying human psychological breaking points, trying to understand how to use terror as a weapon against our species. Admiral Harrison's face darkened. "My God, and the Galactic Council knew nothing about this?" "Unknown, sir, but unlikely," Chen's intelligence officer, Major Kim, interjected. "The facility required significant resources and was operating for at least 2 years based on the records we recovered. The Valorans also had subjects from other species. We found evidence of experiments on young Altarians, Centauri, and at least 4 other races." The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. "Captain, the Council is demanding that you withdraw immediately and submit to their investigation of what they're calling an unprovoked attack on a peaceful research facility. They're threatening military action if you don't comply." Chen felt her hands clench into fists. "Sir, with respect, they can go to hell. These weren't research subjects, they were kidnapped children being tortured for scientific data. I understand your anger, Captain, but we need to think strategically here. Humanity is still new to the galactic community. We can't afford to make enemies of the entire Council over—" "Over what, sir?" Chen interrupted, her voice rising. "Over the systematic torture of human children? Over the fact that while we've been playing nice with the galactic community, they've been treating us like lab rats?" Admiral Harrison held up a hand. "Sarah, I'm not the enemy here, but if we go to war with the entire Galactic Council, humanity could be wiped out. We need allies, not more enemies." "Then let me ask you something, Admiral," Chen said, her voice deadly calm. "Did you authorize me to implement Crimson Dawn protocols?" "I did, but—" "Then you already know what my next actions will be." Chen gestured to her communications officer. "Have you been monitoring the Deathworlder networks?" Lieutenant Commander Torres nodded. "Yes, ma'am. The message went out on all encrypted channels 2 hours ago. We've already received responses from the Saurian Dominion, the Hive clans, and the Ursine Confederacy. They're extremely interested in our findings." Admiral Harrison's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "Sarah, what have you done?" "What I had to do, sir," Chen replied. "I sent them everything. The medical records, the experiment logs, the video footage of what we found in those laboratories. Every single piece of evidence showing what the Valorans did to children from multiple species." The tactical display suddenly chimed with new contacts. Chen's sensor officer looked up from his station with wide eyes. "Captain, we're detecting multiple FTL signatures inbound to this system." "Large ships, military configuration? How many?" Chen asked. 17 so far, ma'am, but more are still arriving. I'm reading Saurian heavy cruisers, Hive clan swarm ships, and— Jesus, is that an Ursine dreadnought?" Chen smiled grimly. "Gentlemen, you are witnessing the birth of something new in this galaxy. For too long, the so-called civilized species have treated Deathworlders like useful barbarians. They've used us for military muscle while looking down on us as primitives. But they made one crucial mistake." "What's that?" Admiral Harrison asked, though Chen could see he already suspected the answer. "They forgot that every Deathworlder species shares one fundamental trait," Chen continued. We all understand that the strongest exist to protect the weakest. Every species that earned the Deathworlder classification did so because their homeworld was so dangerous that only those willing to fight for their families and communities could survive. The sensor readings continued to climb. 30 ships, then 50, then more. Each arrival announcement sent a chill through the human crew, but Chen felt only satisfaction. "Captain," Major Kim reported, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Saurian flagship Apex Predator. Admiral Sector is requesting immediate tactical coordination." "Put him through," Chen ordered. The holographic display split to show Admiral Harrison on one side and a massive reptilian figure on the other. Admiral Sectar's scarred hide and predatory eyes spoke of a lifetime of warfare. When he spoke, his voice carried the rumble of barely contained violence. "Captain Chen," he said, "my species has reviewed the evidence you provided. The Hive clans and Ursine Confederacy have done the same. We are in agreement. This cannot stand." "Admiral Sectar," Admiral Harrison interjected, "surely there are diplomatic solutions to this crisis that don't require—" "Silence," Sectar growled, his massive head turning toward Harrison's image. "Human Admiral, you speak of diplomacy while your younglings screamed in alien laboratories. The time for words has passed." Chen straightened to attention. "Admiral Sectar, I formally request activation of the Deathworlder Defense Pact. The evidence shows crimes against children from multiple member species." "Request acknowledged and approved," Sectar replied without hesitation. "Captain Chen, you now have tactical command of the largest Deathworlder fleet ever assembled. Use it well." As the connection ended, Chen turned back to Admiral Harrison. "Sir, I respectfully request that Earth Command make an official announcement. Humanity is no longer bound by Galactic Council authority. As of this moment, we recognize only the jurisdiction of the Deathworlder Coalition." Admiral Harrison stared at her for a long moment. "Do you understand what you're starting here, Sarah?" "I understand perfectly, sir," Chen replied. "I'm starting a revolution, and it's long overdue." The fleet assembles. The void of space around Kepler 442 had never seen anything like it. Ships materialized from hyperspace in brilliant flashes of light, each arrival adding to the growing armada that now surrounded the system. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Defiant, watching the tactical display with grim satisfaction as the fleet count climbed past 100 vessels. "Ma'am?" her sensor operator called out. "The Hive Clan swarm ship Thousand Stings has just dropped out of hyperspace. That brings their contribution to 23 vessels." Chen nodded. The insectoid Hive clans had responded with typical efficiency. Their ships were smaller than most, but they fought in coordinated swarms that could overwhelm even the largest dreadnoughts. Their arrival had been accompanied by a simple message: "The swarm remembers its young." "Captain," Lieutenant Commander Torres reported, "Admiral Sectar is requesting a fleet commanders meeting. He's asking all senior officers to report to the Apex Predator in 2 hours." "Acknowledged," Chen replied. She turned to her executive officer, Commander Walsh. "Tom, you have the bridge. I want continuous monitoring of all Galactic Council frequencies. If they're planning something, I want to know about it." As Chen prepared to leave for the meeting, her communications officer looked up from his station. "Captain, we're receiving another transmission from Earth Command. Admiral Harrison is requesting immediate contact," Chen sighed. She had been expecting this call ever since the fleet had grown beyond 50 ships. "Put him through to my ready room. And Tom, if any more ships arrive while I'm gone, make them welcome. Every Deathworlder vessel that arrives makes our message clearer." In her private office, Chen activated the secure communication link. Admiral Harrison's image appeared, but this time he wasn't alone. Behind him sat General Morrison, head of Earth Defense, and President Carter herself. "Captain Chen," President Carter began, her voice carrying the weight of authority, "I need to understand exactly what's happening out there. Our long-range sensors are detecting an unprecedented military buildup in the Kepler 442 system." "Madam President," Chen replied respectfully, "we currently have 127 Deathworlder vessels in system, with more arriving every hour. Representatives from 12 different species have committed to what they're calling the Deathworlder Coalition." General Morrison leaned forward. "Captain, that's the largest military force assembled since the Galactic Wars 300 years ago. What exactly are your intentions?" "Our intentions are justice, General," Chen replied firmly. The evidence we recovered from the Valoran facility shows systematic crimes against children from multiple species. We're talking about documented torture, psychological experiments, and worse. These aren't the actions of rogue scientists. This was an official Valoran government operation. President Carter exchanged glances with her advisors. The Galactic Council has filed formal complaints against humanity with every major government in the galaxy. They're claiming we've committed an act of unprovoked aggression against a peaceful research facility. Madam President, I've sent you the complete files, Chen said. You've seen the videos, read the medical reports. Do those look like the actions of a peaceful research facility? No, they don't, the President admitted quietly. But Sarah, we need to think about the bigger picture here. If humanity goes to war with the Galactic Council, we could be facing economic sanctions, trade embargoes, complete isolation from the galactic community. With respect, ma'am, Chen replied, the galactic community allowed our children to be kidnapped and tortured while they looked the other way. Maybe isolation from that kind of civilization isn't such a bad thing. Admiral Harrison spoke up. Captain, the Council is assembling their own fleet. Intelligence suggests they're mobilizing forces from at least 30 different species. You could be facing odds of 10 to 1 or worse. Chen's tactical display chimed with another arrival. She glanced at it and felt a chill of satisfaction. Admiral, that's the Ursine Confederacy flagship Great Maul that just arrived. The Ursines haven't left their home system for military action in over a century. Do you know what it takes to make a species of militant pacifists angry enough to mobilize their fleet? She transferred her display feed to Earth Command, showing the massive bulk of the Ursine dreadnought. The ship was easily 3 times the size of humanity's largest vessel, its dark hull bristling with weapon systems that hadn't been activated in generations. My God, General Morrison breathed. That thing could level a planet. The Ursine sent a message with their fleet, Chen continued. It was very simple. Those who harm cubs face the Great Maul. Every Deathworlder species has the same basic instinct, ma'am. We protect the young no matter the cost. President Carter was quiet for a long moment. Captain, if I order you to stand down, will you comply? Chen looked directly into the camera. Madam President, I serve Earth and humanity. But right now, those 37 children we rescued represent something bigger than national loyalty. They represent the principle that innocent children should be protected, regardless of their species. If you order me to abandon that principle, I'll have to respectfully decline. You're talking about mutiny, General Morrison said sharply. No, sir. I'm talking about morality, Chen replied. The chain of command exists to serve the greater good of humanity. Sometimes that means making hard choices. Before anyone could respond, her communications officer's voice came through the intercom. Captain, urgent message from the Saurian flagship. Admiral Sektar reports that Council forces have been detected moving toward this system. Chen stood up. Madam President, I have to go. The fleet commanders are meeting to plan our response to the Council's military mobilization. I strongly recommend that Earth Command make an official statement supporting our actions here. History will judge us all by how we respond to this crisis. Sarah, President Carter called out as Chen moved to cut the connection. Be careful out there. The whole human race is depending on you. No, ma'am, Chen replied softly. The children of every Deathworlder species are depending on all of us. The shuttle flight to the apex predator gave Chen time to study the complete tactical situation. The Deathworlder fleet now numbered 143 vessels from 12 different species. It was an impressive force, but she knew the Galactic Council could field much larger numbers if they chose to. The Saurian flagship was a masterpiece of predatory design. Its sleek hull resembled a massive space-going reptile, complete with armored scales and weapon ports that looked like glowing eyes. As Chen's shuttle approached the docking bay, she could see similar vessels from other Deathworlder species arranged in defensive formations around the system. Admiral Sektar met her personally at the airlock, his massive reptilian form towering over even Chen's above-average height. His scarred hide and predatory smile spoke of countless battles fought and won. Captain Chen, he rumbled, welcome aboard the Apex Predator. The other commanders are waiting in the war room. The meeting was unlike anything Chen had ever experienced. Around the circular table sat representatives from species that had spent most of galactic history fighting each other. Saurian Admiral Sektar with his cold reptilian intelligence. Hive Queen Zekth, her insectoid form clicking and chittering as she communicated with her swarm. General Ursa from the Ursine Confederacy, whose massive bear-like appearance hid a brilliant tactical mind. "The situation is clear," Admiral Sektar began without preamble. "Council forces are mobilizing in the Altair system, approximately 12 light-years from our current position. Intelligence suggests a fleet of over 400 vessels from various Council member species." General Ursa's translated voice carried the rumble of controlled fury. "Numbers matter less than purpose. They fight to preserve their comfortable lives. We fight to protect the innocent." The swarm agrees. Hive Queen Zekth's mechanical translator rendered her complex pheromone communications into words. Analysis of evidence patterns suggests Valoran experiments extended beyond this facility. Multiple worlds, multiple species, systematic exploitation of young individuals for research purposes. Chen felt her blood run cold. "How many other facilities are we talking about?" "Unknown," Sektar replied. "But we've identified at least 6 other systems with similar Valoran research installations. The scope of this operation suggests Council knowledge and possible approval." "Then this isn't just about justice for our children," Chen said quietly. "This is about preventing future atrocities on a galactic scale." General Ursa stood up, his massive frame casting a shadow across the war room. "Captain Chen speaks truth. The Confederacy has made its decision. We stand with the Coalition, regardless of odds." Around the table, similar declarations followed. Species that had been enemies for centuries were united by a single principle: the protection of the innocent. "Very well," Admiral Sektar said, his voice carrying the finality of a death sentence. "Let the galaxy know that the age of Deathworlder submission is over. We are no longer their convenient barbarians to be used and discarded. We are the guardians of justice, and we will not be moved." As the meeting ended and Chen prepared to return to her ship, she couldn't help but feel that they were witnessing a turning point in galactic history. The universe was about to learn what happened when the strongest chose to protect judgment of the Deathworlders. The Valoran Defense Fleet had been the pride of their civilization for over 2 centuries. 68 vessels of gleaming white and blue, designed as much for show as for function. They had never faced a real military threat, serving primarily as ceremonial escorts for diplomatic missions and patrol duties in the safest regions of Valoran space. Admiral Kethral stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Serenity's dawn, watching his tactical display with growing unease. The approaching Deathworlder fleet appeared as red dots on his screen, but the true scope of what they faced was only becoming clear now that they were in sensor range. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, voice trembling slightly, "we're reading 167 hostile vessels. Configuration analysis suggests multiple species of origin, all classified as Deathworlder military designs." "Impossible," Admiral Kethral muttered. "The Deathworlders have never cooperated on this scale. They're too primitive to coordinate such a massive fleet operation." His communications officer looked up from her station. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the lead vessel. It's the human ship Defiant." "Put them on screen," Kethral ordered, straightening his ceremonial uniform. Captain Sarah Chen's image appeared on the main display, her expression hard as granite. Behind her, the bridge of her ship bustled with quiet efficiency. "Admiral Kethral, I am Captain Chen of the Human Expeditionary Fleet. By the authority of the Deathworlder Coalition, I order you to surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded." Kethral's mandibles clicked with indignation. "Captain, you are in violation of Galactic Council law. Your unprovoked attack on our research facility constitutes an act of war. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." "Admiral," Chen replied, her voice carrying the cold weight of absolute certainty, "we have reviewed the evidence from your research facility. We know what you did to those children. Your only choice now is unconditional surrender." "Research facility?" Kethral sputtered. "That was a legitimate scientific installation operating under full Council authority. Any test subjects were volunteers compensated according to standard protocols." Chen's expression didn't change, but something deadly flickered in her eyes. "Admiral, among your volunteers was an 8-year-old human boy who spent 3 weeks in sensory deprivation. Please explain to me how a child that young could give informed consent to psychological torture." "The research was vital to understanding Deathworlder psychology," Kethral replied, his voice growing defensive. "The data gathered will help prevent future conflicts between our species. A few individuals' temporary discomfort serves the greater good of galactic peace." "Temporary discomfort," Chen repeated quietly, Admiral, you have 30 seconds to order your fleet's surrender. After that, we will consider you a hostile force. Kethril cut the transmission and turned to his tactical officer. All ships, battle stations. Prepare to engage the Deathworlder fleet. Show these primitives what civilized warfare looks like. The Valoran fleet moved into their traditional battle formation, an elegant defensive sphere designed to maximize their ships' ceremonial appearance while providing adequate protection for diplomatic missions. It was a formation that had never been tested in actual combat. The Deathworlder response was swift and brutal. The Saurian ships struck first, their reptilian predator instincts driving them to attack the flanks of the Valoran formation. The Apex Predator alone mounted more firepower than half the Valoran fleet combined, its weapons designed for the brutal necessities of survival warfare. Admiral Kethril watched in horror as 3 of his cruisers simply ceased to exist, vaporized by weapon systems he couldn't even identify. Return fire. All ships return fire. The Valoran weapons were precisely calibrated, elegantly designed, and utterly inadequate. Their energy beams and plasma charges had been designed for light patrol work and ceremonial displays. Against ships built by species that had evolved in the galaxy's most hostile environments, they might as well have been throwing stones. The Hive Clan swarm ships descended on the Valoran formation like a plague of metallic insects. Each individual vessel was smaller than the Valoran cruisers, but they moved with perfect coordination, striking weak points and retreating before the defenders could respond. Their weapons were designed for efficiency rather than elegance, simple, deadly, and utterly relentless. Admiral, his tactical officer screamed over the sound of alarms and explosions. We've lost 17 ships in the first exchange. Their weapons are cutting through our shields like they aren't even there. Kethril stared at his display in disbelief. The beautiful formation of his fleet was being systematically dismantled by enemies that fought with a savagery he had never imagined. Signal retreat. All ships withdraw to the inner system, but the Deathworlders weren't interested in letting them escape. The Ursine dreadnought Great Maul had positioned itself to block the most obvious retreat route, its massive bulk bristling with weapons that could crack planets. When 3 Valoran ships tried to flee past it, the Great Maul's response was swift and final. This is not warfare, Kethril whispered, watching his ships die. This is extermination. Captain Chen's voice came through on all frequencies, broadcast to every surviving Valoran ship. Attention, Valoran fleet. You have fought bravely for a cause that doesn't deserve your sacrifice. Any ship that surrenders now will be treated according to military law. Continue fighting and you will share the fate of those who tortured innocent children. One by one, Valoran ships began powering down their weapons and broadcasting surrender codes. Admiral Kethril watched his fleet melt away until only his flagship remained operational. Admiral, his communications officer said quietly, we're being hailed by multiple council member governments. They're demanding to know our status. Tell them, Kethril said heavily, that the Valoran defense fleet no longer exists. But the Deathworlder fleet didn't stop with the destruction of the military forces. As Kethril watched from his captured flagship, the coalition forces began a systematic assault on every Valoran government installation in the system. The orbital research platforms were the first to go. Each one was boarded by Deathworlder Marines who quickly located and secured any remaining experimental subjects. The platforms were then methodically destroyed, their twisted laboratories turned to scrap metal and expanding gas clouds. The administrative stations followed. Government centers, military command posts, intelligence facilities, all were either captured or destroyed with ruthless efficiency. The Deathworlders weren't interested in conquest. They were performing a surgical removal of the entire Valoran governmental structure. Captain Chen, Admiral Kethril said when he was brought aboard the Defiant as a prisoner, surely this level of destruction is excessive. Our military forces have been defeated. There's no need for further violence. Chen looked at him with eyes that held no sympathy. Admiral, your people spent years kidnapping and torturing children from multiple species. Every administrative center we're destroying contains evidence of these crimes. Every research platform we've captured held more victims. She gestured to a display showing the systematic destruction of Valoran infrastructure. This isn't revenge, Admiral. This is justice. Your civilization built itself on the suffering of innocents, and now it's paying the price. But the civilian population, Kethril began. will be relocated to suitable worlds where they can rebuild without the corrupting influence of their current government. Chen interrupted. The Deathworlder Coalition has no interest in genocide, Admiral, but we will not allow your society to continue existing in its current form. As if to emphasize her point, a new transmission began broadcasting on all galactic frequencies. Captain Chen had prepared a comprehensive presentation of the evidence recovered from the Valoran facilities. Medical records, video footage, experimental logs, all of it was being transmitted to every government news organization and civilian communication network in the galaxy. The universe was seeing, for the first time, the true scope of Valoran crimes against the innocent, children from dozens of species, subjected to psychological torture, biological experimentation, and worse, all in the name of scientific advancement and galactic peace. The galaxy will see that the Valorans were criminals, Chen continued, her voice carrying across the communication networks. But they will also see that the Galactic Council either knew about these crimes and did nothing, or were so incompetent that they failed to detect systematic atrocities occurring under their jurisdiction. Admiral Kethral watched the broadcast with growing horror. You're starting a war that will consume the entire galaxy. No, Admiral, Chen replied quietly. We're ending a war that has been going on for decades. A war against the innocent, fought in secret laboratories and hidden facilities. The only difference is that now everyone will know it happened. On the main screen, the last Valoran government installation exploded in a brief flash of light. The Valoran Republic as a political entity had ceased to exist. What happens now? Kethral asked. Chen turned to look at him, her expression unreadable. Now, Admiral, the galaxy learns what justice looks like when it's delivered by those who understand the true cost of the new galactic order. 6 months after the destruction of the Valoran fleet, the galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the observation lounge of the Defiant, now serving as the flagship of the Deathworlder Coalition, watching as construction crews put the finishing touches on Haven Station. The massive orbital platform hung in space above New Sanctuary, a garden world that had been selected as the new home for the Valoran civilian population. Unlike the sterile research facilities their government had built, Haven Station was designed for healing. Medical centers, counseling facilities, and educational programs filled its corridors, all dedicated to helping the survivors of Valoran experiments rebuild their lives. Captain, Dr. Martinez approached her, carrying a data pad with the latest medical reports. I thought you'd want to see this. Marcus Williams spoke his first full sentence yesterday. Chen smiled, the first genuine smile she had worn in months. What did he say? He asked his sister Emma if she wanted to play hide and seek, Dr. Martinez replied. Not in a frightened way, just like a normal 8-year-old boy. His therapist thinks it's a major breakthrough. Through the observation window, Chen could see children from multiple species playing in the station's recreation areas. Human children laughed alongside young Altarians, Centauri, and representatives from a dozen other races. All of them had been victims of the Valoran experiments, and all of them were slowly learning to trust again. How are the others adapting? Chen asked. Better than we hoped, Dr. Martinez admitted. Having children from different species together seems to be helping. They're learning that they're not alone in what they experienced. The support groups Dr. Yates organized have been incredibly effective. Chen nodded, but her attention was drawn to a new arrival on the tactical display. A sleek council diplomatic vessel had just dropped out of hyperspace, displaying full diplomatic flags and requesting permission to dock. Captain, Lieutenant Commander Torres reported from the bridge via intercom. We're receiving a priority diplomatic transmission from Council Prime Executor Thaindis. He's requesting an immediate meeting with Coalition leadership. Tell him I'll meet with him in Conference Room Alpha in 1 hour, Chen replied. And Torres, make sure our security teams are aware of his arrival. The meeting was tense from the moment Thaindis entered the room. The massive rhinoid's presence filled the space, but Chen noticed that his usual commanding demeanor had been replaced by something that looked suspiciously like nervousness. Captain Chen, Thaindis began, I come here today not as an enemy, but as a representative of galactic civilization seeking a peaceful resolution to our current crisis. Crisis? Chen raised an eyebrow. Prime Executor, the only crisis I'm aware of was the systematic torture of children by one of your member species. That crisis has been resolved. The destruction of an entire civilization is not a resolution. Thaindis replied firmly. The Valoran Republic may have been guilty of excesses, but their complete elimination sets a dangerous precedent. The Valoran government was eliminated, Chen corrected. The Valoran people are alive and well, living on New Sanctuary under coalition protection. They're free to rebuild their civilization, just not one based on the torture of innocent children. Thaindis shifted uncomfortably in his chair. The Council acknowledges that certain Valoran research practices were questionable. However, the complete restructuring of galactic governance cannot be the solution to isolated incidents. Isolated incidents? Chen's voice carried a dangerous edge. Prime Executor, our investigation has uncovered evidence of similar facilities in 17 different systems, operated by 7 different Council member species. We've rescued over 300 children and found evidence of experiments dating back 15 years. The color drained from Thaindis's face. That's impossible. The Council would never sanction such activities. The Council either sanctioned them or was so incompetent that it failed to detect massive criminal operations occurring. Under its jurisdiction, Chen replied. Either way, the results speak for themselves. She activated a holographic display showing a star map of the galaxy. Large sections of space now showed green markers instead of the traditional Council blue. The Deathworlder Coalition now provides protection and governance to over 60 worlds, Chen continued. Species that were previously treated as second-class citizens or convenient muscle for Council operations have chosen to join us instead. Turns out that when you actually protect people instead of exploiting them, they tend to be grateful. You're talking about the dissolution of galactic civilization, Thaindis protested. Thousands of years of progress, of unity among the stars. Unity built on the suffering of the innocent isn't civilization, Prime Executor, Chen replied quietly. It's just organized barbarism with better technology. Before Thaindis could respond, the conference room door chimed. Chen's aide entered and whispered something in her ear. Chen's expression grew grim. Prime Executor, it appears your visit is more timely than I thought. We've just received a distress call from the Altair system. A Centauri research facility has been discovered conducting illegal experiments on sentient subjects. My fleet is preparing to respond. Thaindis stood up abruptly. Captain, you cannot simply attack every facility you suspect of wrongdoing. There are proper legal channels. The same legal channels that failed to protect those children for 15 years? Chen interrupted. Prime Executor, let me explain how the new galactic order works. The Deathworlder Coalition exists for one purpose: to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Any species, any government, any organization that harms innocents will face our justice. And who decides what constitutes harm? Thaindis demanded. Who gives you the right to act as judge and executioner for the entire galaxy? Chen stood and walked to the observation window, looking out at the children playing in the recreation areas. Those children give us that right, Prime Executor. Every species that has joined the coalition understands a fundamental truth that the Council has forgotten. Strength exists to protect weakness, not to exploit it. You're starting a war that will tear the galaxy apart, Thaindis said desperately. No, Chen replied, turning back to face him. We're ending a war that has been going on for decades. The war against the innocent fought in secret by those who claimed to represent civilization. She walked back to her chair and sat down, her expression softening slightly. Prime Executor, the Coalition doesn't want to destroy galactic civilization. We want to save it, but we will not allow the systematic abuse of the vulnerable to continue, regardless of who protests. What are your demands? Thaindis asked quietly. Complete transparency in all research involving sentient subjects, Chen began, counting off on her fingers. Independent oversight of all detention and experimental facilities. Immediate access for Coalition inspectors to any installation suspected of criminal activity. And formal recognition of Deathworlder species as equal partners in galactic governance, not just convenient muscle. The Council will never agree to such terms, Thaindis protested. Then the Council will continue to lose member species to the Coalition. Chen replied simply. Prime Executor, we're not asking for your permission. We're offering you a chance to be part of the solution instead of part of the problem. Thaindis was quiet for a long moment. And if we refuse? Then you'll continue to watch galactic civilization crumble as more and more species decide that true protection is worth more than comfortable lies, Chen said. The choice is yours. After Thaindis left, Chen returned to the observation lounge. Dr. Martinez found her there an hour later. "Still watching the children play, Captain," he said quietly. "Marcus asked me to give you this." He handed her a drawing that had clearly been made by a child's hand. It showed a large spaceship surrounded by smaller ones, all of them protecting a group of stick figures holding hands. At the top, in shaky letters, were the words, "Thank you for saving us." Chen felt her eyes water as she looked at the simple drawing. "Dr. Martinez, are we doing the right thing? Sometimes I wonder if we're just replacing one form of tyranny with another." "Captain," the doctor said gently, "I've been working with these children for 6 months now. I've seen what systematic cruelty does to innocence. What you've built here, this coalition, this commitment to protection, it's not tyranny, it's hope." Through the observation window, they could see Marcus Williams teaching a young Altarian how to play a human game. Both children were laughing, their traumatic experiences slowly being replaced by new memories of safety and friendship. "You know what the most amazing thing is?" Dr. Martinez continued. "These children don't see species differences the way adults do. To them, we're all just people who kept them safe. Maybe that's the real lesson here, that the strongest bonds aren't formed by politics or economics, but by the simple act of protecting those who need protection." Chen nodded, carefully folding the drawing and placing it in her uniform pocket. "Dr. Martinez, transmit a message to all coalition fleets. We have more facilities to investigate, more children to rescue. The war against the innocent isn't over yet." "Yes, ma'am," the doctor replied.